I'm your host, Christene Marie, and tonight we are going to be diving into just why in the heck are relationships so difficult, so hard? Why is it that, man, there just always seems like something is coming up, something is challenging, there's another misunderstanding, there's another opportunity to honestly get together and talk it out and hash it out and just better understand each other. And so tonight I want to dive into that a little bit in terms of frankly brainstorming on my end. One of the things that I do love best about this show is that frankly we can explore some of the questions in real time together, some of the things that is I guess under that is out there for questioning. And sometimes I like to think of it as like taking a thought that I have or a question that I have and like pulling it out and actually examining it, like putting it on the table, taking it into the courtroom. I think it was Jordan Peterson that said it is so incredibly important that we possess the ability to battle out different concepts and ideas in our own mind. And in that process of doing that, there's something that's so strengthening for our own ability to reason and then also be able to defend our position and defend why we think what we think. But unless we go through that inner dialogue, then we're going to unfortunately be in a public setting where someone asks us, why do you believe what you believe, or why do you take this stand, and we're not going to be prepared, or we're not going to be ready. There's even this biblical narrative of this gentleman, Paul, who goes into Athens and he's sitting there and he's just watching all these people debate philosophy. And because he's so well read, he's able to go and talk about what he believes and able to take a stand, but not in a way that is aggressive or even just like dogmatic, but he knows their arguments and he knows his own. And so, even in this process of analyzing why are relationships so difficult, there's something here that I actually think is so important for us of do we actually have the ability to sit in someone else's shoes and understand their experience. You know, I heard it said one time, it's so incredibly important that you not only, yes, can offer your own perspective and understand truly what you believe, but that you also have such clarity to understand the other person's perspective so that I could defend them if I had to. And obviously, I'm choosing my side and my corner because I do believe it, but I understand what you're saying, and I can empathize with you to the extent that I could argue on your behalf if I needed to. And y'all, that's radical. We don't operate that way. We don't think like that. That's not a stance that's really encouraged. Really, truly understanding someone and getting to the root of it. Even tonight, I actually messaged someone close to me, and I just said, "Hey, I had." I noticed that you were acting a little bit different tonight, and it seemed like I offended you a couple times. Is everything okay? Normally, I would honestly just leave and kind of let that simmer. And because I asked, she was then able to come back and say, "Nothing's absolutely nothing's wrong. This is why I reacted the way that I did in those 2 moments." And I'm so grateful because now mentally and subconsciously, I'm free from whatever that was. So by us not taking the time to truly understand what the other person is saying, getting to the root of it, understanding why, we carry these subconscious narratives about them in our own minds and on a subconscious level so that the next time we see them, we've built a case around them. And so, just like how it's so important that we actually take time to really sit in the other person's shoes, we need to do that same thing for ourselves. So, before we continue on tonight, I just wanted to take a quick moment to jump here in the chat. I'm live on a couple of different platforms, but Lender Jr., good to see you. Erkin, Visha, thank you guys so much for chatting tonight. I am live, and I'm live on a couple of different places. So if you have any questions, I'd love to engage with you. But tonight, I really on the show, there's not tonight it's really about kind of exploring some concepts around why are relationships so hard. I've been with actually my family for the last 2 weeks, and it's been so wonderful. And while also being so wonderful, there's just the human element of engaging with different people and different personalities. And I've learned even just a lot. Like, you can do kind of a whole human study with a big family. I'm one of 6 kids, and both my parents were there. And there was just a lot for us as we add in the babies, and as we add in, the in-laws, there's a lot there that kind of starts coming to the surface when you start seeing each other in different dynamics, when you start seeing yourself in different dynamics of, "Oh, man, like, why did I show up that way?" And before we can really go and address someone else and their position, it's so important that we take the log out of our own eye. It's that whole concept of, like, we cannot see anyone or anything clearly until we've done the work to look in the mirror. Otherwise, we're our own subjectivity, our own predisposition is going to blind us from being able to see someone else clearly. I saw something the other day that just, oh man, I don't think I screenshotted it. Effectively, it was along the lines of, we will prejudge someone else for how they act in a situation based off of how we would handle it. And I think in one sense that's actually really beautiful, because there's something that, frankly, it shows that, well, I must think that I would do something that's right or honorable in that moment. And so then when someone acts in a way that conflicts with how I would show up, there's a sense of confusion. And frankly, that's what can allow for a lot of these I like to think of it as splinters. Like, just a little splinter goes in the skin, a little splinter, a little splinter. And then over time, my gosh, I am so angry because I'm so hurt, I'm so cut up, I've got all these splinters, but in the moment, it was just a tiny, tiny little splinter, it wasn't worth talking about. But the more those happen, the more those actually come up and reside just beneath the surface. Those are so, so dangerous. So, first we need to look at ourselves. Why am I even bothered in the first place? Why is it that this is even a concern to me? What does this experience externally have to say about me internally? Um, I'm thinking about when the whole thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, frankly, was about this concept I had this afternoon while I was driving, about having almost like likening the way that we look at friendships like we would a scorecard, like a relational scorecard. How do you decide who you become friends with? We have a resume for ourselves, we have a job description for our work, but what about our friendships? Why is it that there's so little in terms of education and training? And hey, here's how you do relationships, which is the hardest thing ever. We're not given any kind of playbook or any kind of rule book. And so I was thinking today, to be consistent with every other area of our life, it would be so curious to consider relationships and your relationship with each person almost according to a scorecard, because my relationship with one sister is very different from a relationship with another sister. One is going to be super strong in one area, one is not in another. And so, if I go into both relationships expecting the same thing and the same outcome, I'm going to be sorely disappointed. And frankly, it's unfair to them. They're two very different people. Even though we came from the same household, we have very different experiences in the world, very different temperaments and makeup. And so, if I'm not taking stock of who they are, why they do what they do, and then also just recognizing, okay, they have a different value system in one particular category of life than I do over here. So therefore, I need to actually train my body, mind, and soul so that when I encounter them, I remember the data that they've given me, so that there's a self-preservation in that, where I'm not exposing myself, where now we've got different values. And now we're actually going to be fundamentally operating and showing up very, very differently because we have a different perspective and lens through which we view the world. Versus, I recognize that we're going to show up very differently, and that's okay. And we kind of move through that almost a permission, like, you can be different than me. And I don't frankly, this is just me being super honest. I haven't realized just how different my siblings are all from each other. We're all so different. And growing up, I think that we all thought we were really similar. And so now in adulthood, it's recognizing how different we are and also how much we still love each other. There's so much that's divisive out there right now that if you're different from me, we're separate. rather than we're different, but we're still unified. And that's a really, I think that's probably one of the most important things we can learn in relationship. My sister's husband, before he was killed, he told her if ever they had a fight, he was like, "Why are we fighting? We're on the same team. Yes, sure, we take a different position on the playing field, but man, we're on the same team. Why are we acting like we're not?" So before I keep going, I just wanted to take a quick moment to say hello to some folks here in the chat. I'm live on a couple different channels, but X Blossoms, thank you for joining. Um, I'm not gonna say this. San Khalil, thank you so much for joining. You said, "How do you maintain your own when you're working in a team?" Um, that's such a good question. I'm wondering if you're talking specifically about maintaining your own values or maintaining your own presence of, kind of keeping your own personhood when you show up on a team. I Either way, I actually think that it comes after we've really established it for our own self. The way we show up externally is on the other side of have we done the work to look in the mirror in the first place? And so that's, even it's so interesting you say that. Just this morning, I got together with a friend and we were talking about how it's so easy to wait until we're in a different life circumstance to see the change that we want in ourselves rather than recognizing so much of the power is in and it's in our control, and we have the ability to bring so much change. I was in actually a therapy discussion, and my therapist said, in relationships, 69% of the relationship can only that cannot be changed because it's such belonging to the individual. 31% of the relationship can change, but the other 69% that you don't like about the relationship is never gonna be able to change because you're dealing with an individual who has a story, a mind, an experience with life, value systems, belief systems, and then you've got your own. So really, there's only about 31% out of the total 100% of the relationship that can actually be changed. And man, doesn't that bring so much freedom? It's like, okay, you do you. I'm going to figure me out. And hopefully, we're heading in the same direction, rather than us trying to change each other, rather than us trying to I think that this even as I was sharing, I don't think I've realized just how much I've really placed, this story of, "Man, we're all so similar." I really thought that for so long, and I think that that's done some damage because we're all so different, and it's that narrative of we're all so similar forces us into a mold. And so, frankly, I think that there's something about, when you're talking about being on a team and working together as a team, but still really holding your own, man, does that leader have to be so confident and so strong to lead well in the unique permission for every single person to be their own unique presence. That's hard. That's incredibly hard. I was hosting a webinar a couple months ago with a client of mine, and he was interviewing someone from Harvard. We were talking about relationships, and he was talking about the fact that psychological safety is so incredibly important in corporate world and 9 to 5 jobs and working with a team. If you don't feel literally in your nervous system that you're safe, man, you're not gonna be able to be creative, you're not gonna be offering ideas, and you're not gonna be able to grow as a team and a company, and that so often comes from the top down. I know that it's possible to do it from the bottom or middle as well, but I think it's gonna take so much longer, and frankly, if we're not aligned with leadership in terms of our value, that's where the scorecard comes in, the relational scorecard. There's multiple categories in terms of, depending on the intimacy of the person, what's the position or dynamic like? Are they your partner? Are they your parent, your boss? Obviously, all of those factors weigh in a lot. But then, okay, let's look at the categories on the scorecard. What do you value in terms of a really good friend? My therapist asked me this question 4 years ago when I first really started considering what do I want? Because I never paid attention to that before. And I was asked, what do you want? And I was like, I have no idea. And I don't need anything. And he was like, well, you need water, you need oxygen. And I was like, okay, fine. I need something. But in friendships, platonic relationships, what do I want? What do I need from that? Romantic relationships, from my boss, from my team members, from my employees, from my sister, parent, what do I want in that regard? What do I want to receive from them, and what do I also want to be able to give to them? Because I think we all know what it's like to have friends who we can be creative with and ideate and dream and talk about ideas versus the people that you experience judgment from them. That's not safe. And so we have to know what we want first. And we also have to look in the mirror of, well, how am I currently showing up in that relationship? Because we have the power, 69% of the power in one sense, to change so much of that dynamic just by our own taking and assuming of radical responsibility. But it does start with that scorecard. Have we taken the time to really analyze what we want in the first place? What deems a healthy friendship? What deems a healthy environment, work environment? And that doesn't mean that it's not hard. That's probably been the number one major shift for me in 2025 with my partner, was recognizing that having issues, having conflict is not a sign of unhealth like I had thought it was. We were in conflict, it's how do we get out of this? Rather than, oh, we're in conflict, here's an actual golden opportunity to grow, to examine myself, to examine him, to serve him and love him and help him and let him help me. Isn't that a big why of why we're in relationships to begin with? But if I have a faulty scorecard, or if I have a scorecard that's subconscious, I'm weighing my relationship according to a scale, which I don't know about. So it's so important that we bring this scorecard to our awareness. We become aware of what it is. The very first word in the definition of emotional intelligence is to become aware of. And we have to become aware. What is going on inside of us at a subconscious level where we're assigning meaning to something that frankly we haven't talked about, or even we don't know what it is. I've been reading, I started yesterday, but I last year read A Course in Miracles, and they have a daily exercise. And I did it for about half the year and then I dropped off. So started yesterday. I read lesson 1 and I plan to read it live every day, frankly, for my own sake. And if anyone finds it meaningful or helpful, please join. I plan to do it every day before 12 Eastern. That's my goal. But the last 2 days has been talking about how we assign meaning to whatever we see, and what does it look like to actually let go of that meaning and allow for us to just truly be releasing of people, places, things, and see what happens. And so as we progress through the lessons, more is going to be unveiled there. But for now, I just saw you put here in the comment, and I'm sorry I missed it earlier. Um, you said to recognize and change. When you were talking about, I'm just going up to your initial questions. How do you maintain your own when you're working in a team in terms of change? I hope that what I shared was helpful in that regard. I think that really at the end of the day, if we want to see real change, it is by routinely looking in the mirror. And the way that I look in the mirror, when I say that practically, like that's a concept, right? But practically, that looks like every single morning, taking time to journal, taking time to get aligned. And when I say alignment, it's really this concept of bringing my behaviors, my beliefs, my mindsets, my physical body, my emotional state, it's like they're all scattered fragments. But then as I kind of move through the process of doing deep breathing, there's something about the rhythmic breathing of our body and the way our biology is, that in the exhale and inhale, it's very calming and soothing. And so we actually can calm our own body down. And in the calming down of our body, once it maintains and kind of gets to a stasis baseline, then it can learn something new. But if our nervous system is in a fight or flight mode, we can't change. And so as we're talking about how do we see real change for ourselves, the 69% that we can control in relationships, are we even first taking the time to calm our nervous system to get to a fundamental baseline so that we can have real change? So my mornings are so important to me. They are like sacred. I don't use that word lightly. It's such a sacred space. My friend called it a container of time. And I really like that, because in that container, if the container is 2 hours every morning or 1 hour every morning, you can do whatever you want during that time, but it's sacred. and it's for you, to honor you, to do what is life-giving for you so that you start the day with a full tank rather than trying to give from an empty cup, because I know I have, man, I've lived that way from giving from an empty cup for so many years, and it's damaging for myself and for everyone else, because if we're not able to meet our own needs, we're then inevitably going to be looking to other people to meet our needs, and then they're gonna be wondering why they feel so much pressure from us. And it's because we haven't met our needs to begin with. And then we're coming in with very subconscious expectations. That's why we have to first become aware of what's going on inside of us. What do we actually really need? What are we really getting at? What's that subconscious scorecard that we're judging everybody else and ourselves by? So by pulling it into awareness, that's kind of the first step for us to move forward. Um, I just saw you ask, "What books would you recommend?" I know from your website that you have a book written. I have a book written. God bless it. It's hopefully going to be published this spring. I frankly, I've rewritten it 4 times. I don't even know if on my website it says it might even have the wrong date on there. I need to redo my website, but, yes, Daring Greatly was the very first book that I read that really gave me permission to view emotions as something to be honored, not as a weakness. I really, really viewed emotions as weakness. And once that change started happening for me, man, it was like the floodgates opened in terms of just being so curious and being so excited to get to know myself and the world with now the other 50% of me engaged. The IQ is the left hemisphere, the EQ is the right. And so now I'm wholly present and wholly here. Another book is The Body Keeps the Score. So Daring Greatly is by Brene Brown. The Body Keeps the Score is actually by the gentleman who coined the term PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. And that book is written by Bessel van der Kolk. And he talks about how our bodies retain trauma. That's a dense read. So depending on how much you want to read and get into it. But I really, really did love Daring Greatly. Oh, I can't believe I almost forgot this one. I'm reading right now David Hawkins' Letting Go. I think every human needs to read that book. I told my siblings that tonight. I was like, if there's one book, read that book. Letting Go. It's so, so important. How can we actually live free by not having the by not having ourselves carried by the whims of other people, whether it's by their emotions, their words, their actions. We are able to maintain a steady place. People throw around this word grounded, and that doesn't really make sense unless you think about it like, okay, I'm actually able to stay rooted and grounded in myself. Even if other people are being crazy around me, I'm built on a firm foundation. I'm strong, I'm secure, I'm good. That's that's gotta be a superpower. Um, I, I'm just now looking here at another comment. Are you solely basing it off of personal relationships or rather values of your situation? Um, frankly, when we're talking about scorecards, they really should be different per person. And this is where, man, it gets granular. But if we take the time to develop the scorecard kind of template, and frankly, this might be something that I actually do so that I can share with you guys, because I've done this for my immediate family and my inner circle, and I've also done it for my executive assistant. What do I want that relationship to look like? Because then it helps. And even actually today I was on a workshop and they were talking about specifically for your executive assistant, what do you actually truly need? Because again, if you don't map it out, what you need, what you want, what your expectations are, how you plan to show up for them to help them, and you're looking in the mirror, again, it goes both ways. We have to be looking in the mirror. But I think in regards to the values element, I've actually fired clients off of not being aligned in values. So it goes cross industries, professional, personal. The alignments of values is so important. But then the question becomes, do we even know what our values are in the first place to then be able to create a scorecard accordingly? Um, I'm just checking out the comments here. Drew, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the things that you're sharing. Um, I wow, you just shared something that's so powerful. Most women are not taught how to treat a man or care about her feelings. Um, care about his feelings. I just wanted to double click on that because I was actually talking surprisingly to one of my clients the other day, and he said something really similar. He was like, "Women aren't raised to be to know how to be good mothers, how to be good uh wives." And you know what? With that, it's so funny. I I have, I need to it's so funny, I just saw the time, it's 11:59 right now, and I committed to going to bed by 12 AM, so I'm all ready for bed, I, like, already did my skincare routine. I need to go to bed, y'all, to keep my word to myself. I'm gonna resume this tomorrow evening, um, and we'll talk specifically about your questions. I am going to keep this chat open after I jump off so that I can see what the rest of these questions are. But we'll talk specifically about this because I think that this actually warrants a real conversation. So with that, thank